All right, what's up, everyone? My name is Romar, and I am a cybersecurity professional focused on implementing enterprise security solutions. So, in this video, we are going to demonstrate the Cloudflare One Zero Trust Access. And before we go on to the configuration, just a brief overview on what is my current network topology so that you will have like an idea on how it actually implements or how it actually incorporates into your solutions if you're trying to use this one. So I just used this NIST.gov, NIST.gov topology of what zero trust architecture is. So let's just say, for example, that this is my head office, which is my home where I lived in. And I have here an internal resources that I am hosting. That's basically my EVE-NG, and sometimes I need to access it when I'm outside my home. I still need access to that. Normally, I do use a WireGuard VPN, but right now I'm not using it now because I'm having problem with my router, with the it's getting overhead, the internal resources usage. So for example, I'm in a coffee shop, I'd still be able to access it on connecting to the Cloudflare Zero Trust access. There's a lot of different use case for Zero Trust access. Like for example, you have resources on branch site and also even from cloud resources. Basically, you have this one-stop dashboard where you configure everything compared to the traditional thing that you have to configure access on different sites. Now let's go to the Cloudflare One dashboard. Welcome to Cloudflare One. So first, you need to configure a connector. So what does the connector does is it's basically the one that will be routing traffic to your internal resources. It's just like similar to how an IPsec or site-to-site tunnel works, but this one, it relies on a very lightweight image that you install on your network. In case of my example, I used even a smaller footprint, which is a Docker. So let me just show my OpenWRT. So this is my router that I'm using internally on my home network, OpenWRT, and then I installed Docker inside that, and then I just use the Cloudflare Docker image, and this Cloudflare Docker image will communicate and connect to the Cloudflare One dashboard. So let's just go over this one. You go to the networks tab, and then inside that go to connectors. And as you can see, this is the connector that's currently connected to my Docker instance. It's connected right now. It's 7 hours connected. And then once that get connected, you're going to use that host or that Docker image as a hub for you to be able to reach your internal resources when you were outside your home environment. So the way you configure that, you go inside this one, you go inside the tunnel name, home exec, and then there's 3 different categories here. CIDR routes. You can right now you can add these specific routes. You can add hosting routes, but this is the actual zero trust application. So you publish specific applications, and then right there you can configure different kind of policies or which user or users or group of users that will be able to access these resources. And as you can see, the IP or service here is a private address. I am not exposing it to the public internet like what's like the traditional one where you create a object NAT or destination NAT for servers. Right now, I'm just publishing it as this private address because the connector knows how to reach it. And let's just go inside the configuration. So you just put the subdomain here, my web, and then the domain that you own. I own the exec.com. And then at the bottom, you put the service. there are different type of services: HTTP, HTTPS, TCP, etc. Like there's a bunch of here. So TCP, you can just change TCP and then you can add a port here if you want. But me, I'm gonna use HTTPS for this one, and let me just save that one. I, you don't have to put the 443 there. Oh, I forgot to mention that you also have to, if you're publishing your, or if your web server is using a self-sign certificate, if you did not enable this one, it's gonna fail because Cloudflare saying that the certificate of your web server is not trusted, or only a self-sign certificate. So when you enable it, basically just like a curl -k, it's gonna ignore that certificate and just say, okay, proceed with the TLS communication, TLS handshake. So once you got that set up, let me go back here. Also, I added here another set of application that's hosted internally as well. So the reason I add this one just to demonstrate the single sign-on, like if you have access to both resources and you're already authenticated from the first application, you don't have to log into the second application. All right. Now, next, moving forward, we go to access control, and then we go to the applications. This is where you define the applications that you will be configure to be accessed by remote users, or in case of this demonstration, that's me, the user. I need to access this application. Let's just go my application and go. So if you don't have one, you just click add an application, you'll go directly to a similar one. As you can see, there's total of 2 domains here. Not sure why is the application URL showing just the my web, but if you go configure, there's 2 public host name that is published here as well. So the one is the mywebexec.com, and then the next is the secretlist.exec.com, which the one that I published there as well. So yeah, that's the domain that we'll be trying to access once everything is configured. Also, forgot to mention, once you already configure the routes on the network, just be careful that not to forget to configure the policies, because once you configure this one, right now, if you don't have policy, anyone can access these resources, your internal resources that you published here. All right, so just make sure that after you configure this one, make sure you configure the access policy as well. Or might as well configure the policy first before creating the policy routes. Now, going back, there's our other settings there that you can add, but after you configure this one, you now configure like the policy. So for the policy that I configure, let's go first on the login methods. And by default, there's the only one thing that's available here is the one-time PIN. But in this demonstration, I'll be using Azure AD, or right now it's called Microsoft Entra ID. You have to configure integration first from Cloudflare to your Azure AD via Open ID or OICD Connect. I can't remember what they call it. Let me just go there to the configuration. Yeah, this one. OIDC claims. OIDC is the connect, like similar to like a SAML authentication. In this way, you just have to grab the application ID, directory ID, and then there's a shared secret there in the configuration. You have to grab that and paste it here. And the good thing there is when you go here on the integrations, you can actually see the steps on how you configure that or how you gather those information from your Entra ID. Okay, let's go back to the applications. So now we got login methods in place, Azure AD. Now we can attach, there's other configurations here. I didn't touch experience settings and advanced settings. So the other thing important here is the policies. You have to create the policy, what actually is allowed, who actually is allowed to access that resources. So you have configured the routes. You already have configured what can access or who, and now you have to configure the policy. So like who you're going to restrict or who you really allow to access the resources. I hope that makes sense. So you can configure that. Sorry, you can configure that there inside this like configuration policy here. Oh, sorry, I have to go to edit that one, not view more. So you can create new policy here, or you can go on this tab here, add new policy. And this is the policy that I created for that application. It's called self-hosted apps. If you don't have one, just click add policy. Don't mind this allow emails. This is for my email routing, email policy rules. So click add policy, and then you just name it. But in this case, I'm just gonna click this one, configure, similar. Name it self-hosted apps, action, allow, and then session duration, 12 hours. You can change it to whatever is your option here. Let's see if there's like option here. There's no option here, like you configure it manually, but yeah, 12 hours is fine. And then this is the categories or like the condition. Yeah, this should call it condition. It will make more sense. But anyway, the first condition that I had here, and it's the only condition, is that the email that authenticating is this email address, which is my email address. Now, if you want to add some clients, like sometimes like I let some of my colleagues access my home server, they don't have to connect directly and access some of my internal resources. They can just access directly on my on this web application. I'll just add their email here. And if you want more control, you can add other condition here. If you click add include, that's or add require, that's and operator, and add exclude is the not operator. So let's say, for example, I wanted to add these are the available selector. Let's say I want to add Azure groups. So right now I can add that. I'm not sure if you can see it. So I have a remote group, which is called remote clients, and this remote clients is attached to this user. So, but if I click test policy, you'll see that it will fail. Yeah, the reason that is I am using only Microsoft Entra ID, the free tier. So that's a limitation. You cannot attach this group that you configure on AD into the enterprise into an enterprise application on your Microsoft Azure. So we can't do that. But again, if you're like a paying customer of Azure, you can do that there. So you have multiple applications, and then your multiple applications are being accessed by a certain group of users. Let me just put these earphones here. All right. So we got that configured. Now we can save. So there are other options here as well. Like, let me just run this test policy. If you want to add additional settings, so like you want the user to enter purpose justification, like why are you accessing it? Naturally, let's just enable it and see how it looks like on a user experience. And then there's this beta temporary authentication. Let's not use that. And then save. And then we got the policy, and as you can see, it's already attached that. But if it's not yet there, you have to go here on applications, and then policies tab, and then select existing policy, which in this case I already added here. But if you're not, you just click that one and then look for the policy that you created and attach it to this application. Similar to almost similar to all kind of zero trust network, zero trust architecture, or SASE, they call it SASE. I think that's all the moving parts here. We already configured everything. Now let's go for the testing. So as you can see, I'm currently inside my internal network, but it's still gonna work similar because I'm not gonna access it via my local host. I'm going to access it by the publish application on my network routes. Let me go to the network. Let's stay here, or let's not figure that. Let's just go here and yeah. So let me grab this one. Can I copy it? Copy link address, and then we're gonna open a new private window, and we are going to be welcomed by this secure or Cloudflare access. I believe you can change this logo, but let's do that later. And then exec cloudflareaccess.com, my applications, and sign in with Azure AD. Cloudflare Zero Trust. Very good, right? Huh? So let me just click that, and on this side, I'm just gonna grab my password. So remember the username that we enable to log in. If a user in my Azure environment is trying to log in and he's not configured on that list, he's not gonna be able to authenticate here. Well, he will be able to authenticate, but he will be blocked or denied after successful authentication, because on Cloudflare he does not have access to the resources. And let me just grab the multi-factor authentication here. That's 98 and click guest. All right, and we are signed in. Access requested. So this is the justification, right? Remember that we configured that justification. So this is a test. Submit. And so it's just like it's just gonna tell you, it's not gonna block you or something. You just have to put like, why did you access these resources? So this is my Eve ng, and it's running on my internal host there. So as you can see, I access it here instead of using the local address. If you go back here, I can actually access it locally as well, which is the exact similar address, but as you can see, I'm accessing it on a different layer here. And it's also showing us a different certificate because it's showing my certificate on Google Cloud, Cloudflare. So I want to mention also, like, remember we configure the secret list exec.com. So normally, if normally like you don't want to authenticate again if you're trying to access that one. So that's where the single sign-on gonna help you. Like if I go there, I don't need to authenticate, so I get access to the grocery list.txt here. The reason that happened is if you go to the cookies here, this Cloudflare authorization cookies. It's also handed here because it has the same domain. And then if you go here, you can see you have this Cloudflare authorizations as well, which is pretty neat, right? So let's see where we can actually see that. Where can we see that the chat text, like that when the user tries to actually connect to the user and he was asked the reason for connections? I'm gonna have to look into where it was configured. All right. So if your organization is currently using traditional VPN and considering a hybrid setup, like some VPN, some zero trust access, or you want to fully migrate to zero trust architecture, feel free to reach out to me, and we can set up a meeting or talk about your current environment, current infrastructure, and see if you're like down to use Cloudflare or there's other even solutions, but most of them are the same. It's just like they have different kind of pros and cons. So you can choose whatever is good to your environment. All right. That's all, guys. Thank you.